I need support staff to clear the room. Stand up and walk, now!
Hello, and welcome to The Watch. My name is Chris Ryan. I am an editor at TheRinger.com, and joining me in the studio, it's Monty Miller's heart transplant donor. It's Andy Greenwald!
We have a lot to talk about today, some serious, some not. But don't let me let the sun go down on this podcast without telling you what I thought was going to happen with John Hamm's heart transplant in the season finale of Landman.
Greenwald, we are here. It is Monday. We are in Los Angeles, California, where we record The Watch. We're here with Kaya today. We obviously did not do a show last Thursday because of everything that was happening in LA with the fires. It's been one of the craziest weeks of our lives, obviously.
Yeah.
Our hearts go out to everybody who was directly affected by the fires that hit the Palisades, the fires that hit Pasadena, and all over Los Angeles. Myself, Andy, and Kai are obviously all safe, but our thoughts and hearts are with the people of the city who are directly impacted. We are going to do an episode today where we are going to talk about Landman. I thought Andy had a really good idea that we could talk a little bit about Los Angeles on screen as a way of celebrating this city. At the top, though, Kai and I just wanted to shout out a couple of charities if people are looking to give, if people are looking to support Los Angeles. These are ones that Kai and I have worked with, basically. The LAFD Foundation, the YMCA of Los Angeles' Community Impact Fund, the Pasadena City College Community Relief Fund. They're doing incredible work out there in Pasadena, and the Pasadena Humane Society. Kaya, did you want to talk about some Westside stuff?
Yeah, sure. So I just wanted to shout out the Venice Family Clinic. If you are local to LA, they are accepting donations all this week. I think a lot of places are kind of overrun with clothes right now. So they are mostly focusing on non-perishable items, medications, first aid kits, stuff of that nature. Dream Center LA, I think, is working to provide housing for people who have been displaced. Altadena Girls is a foundation that was founded by a teenage girl and is specifically focused on providing clothes. Yeah. They're at Altadena Girls on Instagram. Mutual Aid Los Angeles has a super comprehensive Google spreadsheet of every single place you can donate to and volunteer at, sorted by neighborhood and stuff. And then the Westside Food Bank as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure everybody who is paying attention is also just overwhelmed by the amount of GoFundMes that have been set up so kindly by so many people. Because as you were saying at the beginning, Chris, this is on a scale that is incomprehensible and has affected everyone.
Yeah.
All of us know people who have lost so much. And I think that these spreadsheets that you guys are talking about, these charities specifically, can sort of help fight the feeling of paralysis that it can set in when there are disasters on this scale, particularly, or even for people who are charitably minded and who want to help. I think any bit of help helps, quite frankly, at this moment.
I went out to Pasadena City College today on Saturday and to help out with just carrying water from one truck to a piece of ground. And they were like, we've just got more volunteers than we know what to do with. And I was like, I assure you, I'm a podcaster. I'm more than able to help in any way possible.
Yeah, your physical form is underused in your day job. So.
And I was like, I've been waiting to use these arms of mine.
Are you like that meme of the dog with the tiny head but with the giant arms? Or is that just, you just have Russillo arms underneath your jacket?
But yeah, you can, it's easy to feel powerless. You can help. So just if you're outside of Los Angeles and you're looking for ways to give, the ones that Kai and I just mentioned are really great places to start.
And I think that one thing that we're all feeling who live here is that this is a very, very strange place, Los Angeles. Yeah. And it is physically enormous to the point where, it almost feels quaint now, but that anytime there is any event in the larger Los Angeles metro area, which is bigger than some countries, you get the calls from people on the East Coast being like, is that near you?
Yeah.
And the answer is almost always no. That was not the case this time. But more so, what's been remarkable is the sense that even in a city of which, and we're going to talk about some movies and films and culture, a city that has inspired so much art about how difficult it is to connect, or dare I say, crash into each other on freeways, there is a deeply, deeply entrenched sense of community here that can span regions, towns, zip codes, and the very best of the city has come out in response to these fires that, by the way, as listeners know, are still very much going on.
Yeah, so thank you so much for, we'll kind of move on from the charity stuff there, but you mentioned I have a complicated relationship with the city in like, I think coming from the East Coast, but one thing that was always, I think still remains true, is that like my concept of the city is largely shot through the prism of what I see of it on screen, like what I expected from it when I moved out here.
If I remember correctly, you had said you weren't worried about traffic because you had seen Collateral and you can get anywhere real fast when you need to. So I feel like you were disabused of that pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I think when you were asking me where I was opening my checking account, I was like, well, not downtown Los Angeles. you never know. That money is insecure. But yeah, Andy and I thought we would highlight some of our favorite moments or favorite shows or favorite movies of Los Angeles on screen, just as kind of an homage.
What was your first visit out here? Did you have some concept
of it? I had never
it?
visited here until I came out here to visit Grantland. So,
is that true?
Yeah, it was like, I think in 2011, I came out here. Maybe early 2012. I came out here right before I moved here to like look for an apartment and like go to see the office at Grantland.
Did you have a similar first visit to your most it wasn't your first visit, but your like adult visit to London where you were like, I'm going to stay near Wembley and see everyone and see all the sights and take in some theater? Did you do that here as well?
No, I think I stayed downtown at the J-Dub at the Marriott.
Shout out downtown
LA. What was
LA.
the one that was across the street from the JW Marriott that had all the Wayne Gretzky art in the hotel rooms?
I always was. That's where they put me for years at Grantland before I finally made
J-Dub class yet.
Before I upgraded myself to J-Dub. Yeah, I think the freelancers got put at what was it called?
I can't remember. I think it's gone through a couple of different corporate ownerships since then.
I think Rembert and I were like platinum members of that weird-ass hotel.
Yeah. So that was, I think my first experience was in downtown Los Angeles. And then I still live at the place I moved into in 2012.
I helped you scout that place.
I know, you did great.
I know. I feel very, very responsible for that. That was years before I moved
Shout out to
here.
my landlord, Jen.
But I guess because you...
She's a great lady.
But you never had... So what was the LA of your imagination before that? Because your dad was a film critic, obviously. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a testament to how he felt about California in the sense that I never came here until I turned 35 or whatever. But it was an imaginary place. And I think you can kind of tell that when you come here. The first thing you notice is the light, especially at dusk. And the California light does just put the zap on your head in a way that's just really, really, really intoxicating. I still feel like to this day, you go through all of the day and all of the night to get 45 minutes where you're like, truly, we are in God's country, like when the sun is setting.
Oh, like magic hour, and then when the night blooming jasmine starts, you're like, there are no problems in the world.
Yes. But I remember the number one thing I have on my list here of my favorite LA screen moments is when I moved out here was right around when Drive came out.
Oh, yeah. I wrote about that for Grantland.
Even anecdotally, it felt like in 2012, like there was less traffic. I know that's not real.
Anecdotally. It was weird when you got off the plane and got on the rental shuttle wearing leather gloves.
Wearing the stuntman mask.
The dragon jacket.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. A lot of dudes had dragon jackets at the Thirsty Crow in 2012. But driving around Los Angeles at night listening to music is truly one of the greatest pastimes. If you can find yourself some green lights or an open freeway or whatever, and nobody is trying to cut across 5 lanes of traffic, hit a Tesla that's on fire, then you're in good shape, and you can just let the Drive soundtrack rock or listen to Chromatics or whatever it is that floats your boat. But driving around listening to music and thinking about Ryan Gosling is one of my favorite things to do. So I would put Drive at the top of my LA screen list.
You literally described something that my older daughter does, I think. I think maybe.
Does she drive around Los Angeles? I think I've seen some of her work.
All I do is drive around Los Angeles. And the music in this case would be, Tortured Poets Department. And we'd be talking about Ryan Gosling's performance in Drive, or not in Drive, in Barbie, or his SNL monologue. But can you imagine if we showed her Drive? What's he doing to...
Just make sure I'm there for that when you first do it.
What's he doing to the voice from Finding Nemo? That's disturbing.
Is Oscar Isaac going to get to open a restaurant?
You think that would be her way in?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I came here for the first time in the 80s and visiting my mom's best friend who lived in the Valley. And I remember being told like two things. One, that my mom's friend's daughter went to school with Meredith Salinger, who was recently on screen in The Journey of Natty Gann.
Okay.
So I was like, clearly, I will now be in movies also.
Yeah, I'll be sitting front row next to Nicholson at the Academy Awards.
This is not that I knew who that was, but yes. And then I remember we went to like Art's Deli in the Valley.
Yeah.
And I think my mom freaked out because she was convinced that Paul Simon was there, which is a weird celebrity sighting in LA. But I remember her asking me to get up and go to the bathroom and look 3 times.
How old were you?
9.
And would you know who Paul Simon was? I mean, Graceland was popping back then.
This is my birthright. Now, in retrospect, I think there were a lot of sub 5'5".
Did you go up to a random guy at Arts and just start doing Ladysmith Black Mambazo voices?
Started beatboxing. No, I think that the danger was, as I now know, there are many, many sub 5'5" Jewish men of a certain age getting the pastrami. So it's very likely that it was just like a senior partner at ICM.
Yeah.
But then we went to Disneyland and like Universal Studios and did all the tourist stuff. But the idea of it in the imagination, we'll get into when we talk about some other movies, like it is remarkable. This is not a unique observation at all. But the steady diet of films that tell us either this is Dreamland or Nightmareville are so intense that it is so heightened. And then all my other memories come from coming out here a lot during the Spin Magazine days, both for my brief time as the video game correspondent and going to the E3 Expo.
Out here?
Yeah, out here, yeah. And like magazines only ever put people where the hotels were in West Hollywood, like on the Sunset Strip. And the beauty of that was it was like MapQuest, almost pre-MapQuest era.
But you could print out
MapQuest directions. But there was no sense of... There was also that beautiful thing that lasts for about 12 days when you move here, which is, yeah, I'll go. I'll drive.
Sure. Yeah.
So my experience was shaped by staying on the Sunset Strip, having a friend or two in Silver Lake, and just taking Sunset the whole way.
I love doing that.
I didn't know there were other ways.
Yeah.
And even to get to downtown once, the expo, like that was the only way that the person who I thought knew LA, who was an editor who had been here once, drove us. But there was so much, it felt so profoundly different than our life growing up and then our life in New York that I always felt it was exciting, like full of possibility that any man I saw could be Paul Simon.
Sure.
But it is, I sort of wish that magic stayed after you live here, but instead what you find is a series of interconnected towns.
Sure.
With a lot to love and explore below the surface. But that first glow of what's behind that door? Oh, is that someone? That I can still sort of like chase that tactile feeling of what it was like.
Yeah. So what's your number one thing on screen?
So I'm gonna give you a list. I feel like, first of all, I think your list is really good. I just want to tell you.
Thanks,
ahead
man.
of time. I thought you did a good job. I found myself like...
You should be doing this with Mallory, because Mallory and you, I think, have an equally like loophole-centric
No, okay. You're
strategy.
You're the one that does ties on your top 10s at the end of the year.
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay, how you reserve the right.
How can I choose between my tailors?
And is your top 5, did you do movies and TV on one list? Or did you just pick 5 movies?
I have a couple of things. It's right in front of you.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. So professional, even in the face.
Was your idea?
Even in the face of catastrophe. Yeah, but you know what I'm like? I'm like an idea generator. Like I gift the idea to the room.
You're a creative director,
and then I just take a walk. You know, I let them germinate.
So you go out and smell the night blooming jasmine. While us working men put together.
Yeah, well, ash rains on it. I Okay. Well,
You just kick it, man. You don't have to worry about a top 5.
Well, no, I have 5, but I have a couple categories. They all kind of fall into this idea of like, is it? All right, one thing at a time. The first one I was going to pick was the movie that I ended up watching. I think we've joked about this before, but growing up in Philadelphia, there were if you had cable, you could pay for HBO or whatever, or Showtime. But there was also Prism, which was the local
Prism ruled.
pay channel, and it showed movies all day and Phillies games at nights, and in many ways is our brand.
Yeah.
Being homesick from school, there were certain movies that were always on TV, and one of them was Muppets Take Manhattan, which is still one of my favorite movies. Yeah. But the other one that was always on TV in the late 80s was The Big Picture, the movie that inspired the name of Sean's podcast, which was a Christopher Guest-directed Hollywood satire with Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
And it holds up. It's really funny. But it was on all the time. And in retrospect, it's pretty sweet. He's a film school student who just wants to make heartfelt movies about like families getting together at Christmas time. So he's probably a successful Lifetime director now.
Exactly.
But I was thinking about this assignment.
Or a cult leader.
or both.
Yeah.
That movie about like Hollywood is a dream factory that can grind you up, but is still also, it's still full of possibility. I watch that so much, and I think it's still worth checking out.
I'll shout out a couple of my favorite crime movies. These are not hidden gems.
And are these on your list? Or now you going off your list?
It's right here. It's my list. It's my number 2.
My list open.
Heat, fine. To Live and Die in LA, and Collateral.
Oh, okay, this is what okay, all right. First of all, let's just talk procedural here. I have your list now in front of me. Your number 2 is 3 movies.
I mean, Andy, in this time, can't we show each other a little grace?
I think at this time, when people are desperate for structure and just something to hang on to.
Yeah.
All right, go on. I like these movies.
LA
too.
crime movies is basically what I'm saying. Right. And obviously, Heat is my favorite movie. To Live and Die in LA is one of my favorite movies. Collateral, one of my favorite movies. Definitely gave me some wrong ideas about what kind of trouble I could get into on Alvarado. Although maybe the right idea.
I think the right idea.
BJ's on Alvarado at 2 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the name of a club in Heat.
Name your top 5 things that you were most worried people thought BJ's on Alvarado
BJ's
means.
in Burbank that's like a grill, like a sizzler kind of place.
Yes.
And then everything else.
It also sounds like something that was advertised on the back pages of LA Weekly back when LA Weekly was in print. So you're crushing it.
Is it code for something?
Do you think? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, Collateral gave me a really perverted idea of how long it takes to get it from LAX to downtown.
Collateral, I rewatched recently. Collateral is so cool, and it is so slick.
Yeah.
And I definitely, I would love to watch it.
With your daughter?
It's just, that man isn't sleeping on the LA Metro.
That homie has his briefcase.
No, what I mean is like, whenever there's certain things that we talk about when we cover them, when we're like, the journalism season of The Wire always rang a little false to us, trailblazing journalists that we were.
Sure.
When we saw Collateral as just inveterate East Coasters, I was like, oh man, what an urban fantasia. Yeah. It's incredible the way,
Just go see some jazz.
You could see jazz and then kill a couple dudes. It's just anything's possible. Yeah. I imagine the way
Jada Pinkett is like, I like the cut of your jib.
The way people here seeing it must have just been, this is preposterous.
When Bill and I interviewed Michael Mann for the 3 Heat,
yeah,
he insisted, like we made a joke about that he did not laugh at. We were like, hey, how about that 25 minutes to get from LAX to downtown? And he was like, yes. We were like, okay, never mind.
I mean,
Michael Mann.
To be fair, the last time Michael Mann flew commercial, you probably could do that.
I know.
Do you know what I mean? Like there are like friends of ours who grew up here do say, and I believe them, that the traffic was better.
Yeah, I mean, you read books set in the 70s here, and they're like, I cruised from Franklin over to the beach in 21 minutes.
It's fun, like the mythology of like the Laurel Canyon scene and like all the musicians.
We can't complain about the traffic right now.
No, I'm not. But I do think it's interesting to think about. We're talking about the mythology of LA. That like you read about, Joni Mitchell and David Crosby and like the beautiful art happening in the canyon. And then part of me is just like, well, they were making art because they were essentially sequestered in a place they could never leave because how could they get anywhere? Why would they get stuck in that gridlock? But then you read like an Eve Babbitt's book, and she's like, I changed my mind at 5 p.m. and drove to the Manhattan Beach. Like, oh, so that's how it was
in that family.
in that family. So wait, in that category, I would add
Yeah. The category of LA crime movies.
LA crime movies, of which there are many, and they are great. Well, do you have a separate category for noir?
I don't have any categories. I just have names of movies and shows.
But some of the times there's more under each number. I get it. Just feels a little shaky in here right now. LA Confidential, or do you keep that separate?
Yeah, of course, man. Let's just rattle them off. LA Confidential, Chinatown.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one. This would be a great Chris Farley podcast.
Just name LA stuff until we can't think of anything else, and then the pod ends.
That's a good one. Speaking of LA crime stuff, I did feel like there's a whole category that we could do of just Altman movies that capture LA. I think my favorite is Long Goodbye with Elliot Gould. Just from the architecture to the vibe.
That place was up for rent recently.
Did you consider it?
I've been curious about the funicular situation, the elevator that he's got.
But Chris, now that we're talking about it, we know that they allow cats there.
I bounced it off my wife, and she was like, "Are the cats there?" And I was like, "No." And she was like, "I'm not interested."
But she could bring her own cats there. I know that's been
it's a controversial topic in my apartment.
I know. Yeah. I'd be into that. It's just a phenomenal movie, but also just an incredible hang and like a beautiful updating, although now 50 years old, but of like one of the most essential flavors of LA is Chandler and how you can reinvent it for every era. I would also say Shampoo is super. Yeah. It's just an amazing LA movie. And Shortcuts too.
Yeah, and The Player.
That's way. Oh yeah, I had The Player under. I had a category when I was making this. This place is hell / will fucking kill you, which doesn't feel appropriate for this moment necessarily, but is a vibe of movies.
Sure, yeah,
and one that's sort of fun to engage with.
Of the stuff that we've talked about on this pod, and over the last couple of years, even I would put my last couple of shout outs go out to a trio. I guess I didn't even notice this until I looked. Is of HBO shows. Barry, Insecure, and Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Oh yeah.
So
wait, that just maps beautifully different regions of the city.
You know, just honestly really evokes a very specific, like you were saying, that LA is actually all these little towns and in some ways cities, but all these little towns interconnected by artery roads that, you know, will take you from one side of the city to you can go to Dodger Stadium to the beach on Sunset, you know, but these are about like the enclaves. And I think that these shows actually help me understand Los Angeles in some ways. Yeah. Even if they're not like every time geographically accurate, they're like quintessentially of their place. And Barry, obviously, in the Valley, Insecure in South Los Angeles, and then Curb.
Insecure and Curb, especially. I mean, I think Barry's brilliant in the way it portrays Los Angeles, both in like geography and ethos. But like the thing about those shows is that within the sub-communities and regions of this town, like you really can know everyone or bump into people and have that kind of life. Yeah. That I thought and there's always more to discover and explore. On that note, on my list is the 1994 film Mita Loca, which is set and filmed in Echo Park. Yeah. A very different era of Echo Park, but it's Allison Anders' movie, 1994, about young women growing up in that neighborhood. Really holds up. Watched it pretty recently, and it's just a beautiful.
Did you watch it pretty recently?
I did. Well, a year ago, but
did you show it to your daughter?
I was like, yeah, that's the lake where they're getting jumped. Yeah, great. The swan boats aren't there. It's. Do you do this with like? I find myself as I get older, especially like when I watch anything from 10 years ago or older, like within our lifetime, I'm watching the backgrounds as much as I'm watching the performances. Oh yeah. Like I'm just riveted by, here is a glimpse of that street corner in 1996 or maybe even of 2003 when I remember it and I wasn't paying attention to how much it has changed. It's a great movie for that reason, but it's also just a great, great movie about the parts of LA. Because going through this list, I'm sure you found it to be the case too. LA movies, LA stories, including LA Story, are pretty navel-gazing and entertainment industry focused by and large. Or they are genre celebrations by a town that is always reinventing itself.
Yeah.
Did you? I always like to give a shout out to this, but Los Angeles Plays Itself.
Sure. You can probably still find that streaming in a bunch of places.
I didn't realize that it was.
Tell people what it is.
So Los Angeles Plays Itself is its creator Tom Anderson refers to it as a video essay. It was basically made in academic circles to like make a point about how Los Angeles invents itself through the way it is shown on screen and how certain aesthetics and ethoses are perpetuated and reputations are made basically for what the town is or could be. It's quite long. It's almost 3 hours long. I remember seeing it in the theater with our buddy Sean Howe when it came out, and it is riveting. A lot of the movies that existed when this was made in 2003, 2004 are featured in it. But it is so thoughtful and so fascinating, not just about the depth of the city, but also just about what filmic language can communicate about an actual place. It's kind of like it's a companion piece for the thinkier members of our audience. What's that? The Mike Davis book, City of Quartz?
Yeah.
It's like how this place was made on an academic level. Or you could just watch Drive with Chris. Put on your dragon jacket, boys and girls. Don't worry about if that's Paul Simon or not. Keep driving.
Did you know that Drive was basically like created by Nicholas Winding Refn just driving around with Gosling at night?
Yes.
Yeah.
That did not surprise me.
But like they had the script. It was like it'd been around for a while. Hugh Jackman was going to maybe make it. And then they just like when Refn signed up, he rented a house in the hills, I think. And everybody who was like kind of working on the movie sort of lived with him. And they would shoot in the day. And then at night they would either edit or drive.
Sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
Wait, are you suggesting that we do that? You're looking at me in a certain way.
I love stories like that where it's like the you can tell that the essence of the film came out of some sort of experience that was had while making the movie.
Yeah.
You know, like the Apocalypse Now going up the river thing.
Can I throw a couple other things at you?
Can,
the last
man.
one on my list, the last two, have to have some classic noir in there. In a Lonely Place, probably my favorite noir, but like there is something about the way LA is shot in black and white that it always gets me. And then in terms of like neo-noir or kind of the movie that sums up all of the categories I had, including this place can be a nightmare, is Mulholland Drive.
Oh yeah.
Lynch's LA is pretty important, I think, because he loves the kitsch. Recently had a lovely lunch at his favorite restaurant, the Bob's Big Boy in Toluca Lake.
Oh yeah.
There's a framed photo of him there.
Yeah. What did you have?
I had a Big Boy burger. What do you think?
What?
You think I got the salad?
I don't know.
Do you want me to come on this podcast and say I went to Bob's Big Boy and had a grain bowl?
Do they have grain bowls there?
Of course they do. It was really funny. Yeah, of course they do. I love that there's a frame photo of him. There's a photo of Laura Dern there. Like they know.
Yeah.
And for what it's worth, you know, it is not a bit. Like I'm not even going to get into the reasons why that I was socially adjacent to David Lynch briefly when we first moved here, but like there's some mutual friends were like, it was about kids being the same age, and some mutual friends were like, "Do you want to get dinner with us for the school event?" And he refused unless they went to the Bob's Big Boy in Toluca Lake. It's the only restaurant.
So did you go to? That's where you guys went, or did they?
I wasn't part of this group.
Oh, okay.
This was later.
Okay.
No, my.
I feel like I would have heard that story if you'd gone to Bob's Big Boy with
Everyone
David Lynch.
listening to this would have heard the story. No, the highlight for me was when David's daughter David had the parent-teacher conference before we did.
Okay.
And came out, and I said, "David, how'd it go in there?" And he just looked at me and he thumbs up and he went, "Solid gold," which is also his answer when I interviewed him on stage for the FYC for Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
And that was the only thing he said about the experience of reuniting all the most beloved people of his life for this now potentially career capping achievement.
Yeah.
So maybe it's more that he didn't want to talk to me, but either way, it was charming. There's a whole category of just like of industry stuff that we didn't get into, like The Player, Barton Fink, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, I mean Seth Rogen's upcoming show, The Studio.
Yeah, I really want to see that
on Apple. There's yeah, the more we talk about it, the more it really occurs to me how much of this, how much of what we're talking about is like this metatextual kind of state of our industry, state of how we interpret what we see on screen.
the one thing that I think is lacking, and maybe it's because of the nature of this being, by and large, at least in the media, a company town, is that there just isn't a ton, and I hope some listeners will point out things we've forgotten, but like of just people living here. I mean, like Father of the Bride was filmed in Pasadena. They were just kind of normals and lived there. But I
mean, there's lots of sitcoms that are set in Los Angeles. They're either shot on stages or largely, for the most part, with the exception of Nobody Wants This, like largely shot elsewhere.
I wrote down that. I was like, seeing Adam Brody and Kristen Bell kiss in front of the Los Feliz 3. I was like, oh, there we go. You know what show was very, very good about this, and is a show we don't talk about enough anyway. It just had its 10-year anniversary. Is You're the Worst?
Yeah,
was very, very much East Side of LA.
Yeah,
coded. There was a whole episode, like a Sunday Fun Day, centered around the happy foot, sad foot sign. There was the Judd Apatow Netflix show with Paul Rust and Gillian Anderson called Love.
Yeah, I remember that.
It was up and down, but it was also like
Gillian Jacobs.
I'm sorry, Gillian Jacobs. Yes, it would have been a very different show. Gillian Anderson was on it. The only other 2 TV shows I wanted to shout out, Party Down.
Yeah.
Very industry based, but very, very funny in its perspective on the industry and being slightly outside of it. And then I think one of the most crucial LA texts ever is a show that was supposedly, was set in New York, but filmed here, which is Mad Men. Because the show's relationship to LA, how it positioned LA.
Yeah, is this like dreamland?
Don constantly coming here, Pete working here, Don getting lost in the desert, the way that it served as a counterpoint to the claustrophobia of New York. Again, on a future Mad Men revisit, we could talk about that. But the fact that Mad Men
his finding of spiritual sort of stability out here.
An ending here, at Esalen, but that I'm constantly struck by the fact that the show was so deeply period, so deeply New York, but it filmed here, so they couldn't do exterior locations unless they were pretending to be here, basically, or unless there was very, very controlled. And I think that claustrophobia of being inside of buildings or being dark was essential to the understanding of what New York was, and then the counterpoint of what LA meant to those people, mirroring the journey of many TV writers. And dare I say podcasters.
Sure.
Is an important one. But I don't know. I guess the exercise is fun for us because we love this place and we love these stories and we love these movies and shows. But I'm also hoping that it will inspire listeners to maybe make a little film festival or a little curate something for themselves in concert with making a donation to the charities we mentioned at the top that makes sense for them and wherever they are financially at the moment in terms of their own generous giving.
Yeah, but anything helps.
Try to pair them, try to celebrate this, try to remember that even though we're joking about all the industry stuff, that this is so much more than Hollywood.
Oh, yeah.
This is a real place with generations of real working class people who are very much affected by these tragedies.
Did you actually wind up watching anything this weekend?
I watched the Eagles game.
Yep.
We should say to our listeners that we intended to watch The Pit, which I know people have really enjoyed. I'm going to be honest with you, it was a extremely stressful and extremely upsetting week, and I did not have the bandwidth to engage with the traumatic realities
conditions of emergency room doctors.
I could not do it.
Yeah.
I look forward to watching the show and engaging with it.
Yeah.
Maybe when we're out of the red flag warnings.
I did, in the thick of it, I did The Pit. I did The Pit a little while ago, but I watched the second episode again just to kind of refresh my memory.
Or did you have to reattach a leg or something? Is that what it's about?
And then I watched Peter Berg's American Primeval.
See, that's the other thing. I couldn't. The universe could not have set up worse shows for us to be watching right now.
It was tough. I needed to switch out, and I just was like, I'm putting Interstellar on, and I'm vibing out. I gotta
You gotta go to space with Dad.
Exactly.
I get it.
I need to go to space with my dad.
There's literally no better way to escape than that. That makes a ton of sense.
We did watch Landman, and I can't tell you how excited I got on Saturday night. I can't remember what the last football game was on Saturday night, but me and Mallory were just texting each other 3 hours till Landman.
Well, also Mallory just had the Ravens victory, so she was in a good mood.
So she was vibing. And you open up old Paramount Plus.
Mm-hmm.
You load up the Landman finale on late Saturday night on the West Coast.
We watch so much Paramount Plus now. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I just shine a light over there.
Do you have points
If
on
you
the
want to
back?
follow me, you can follow me.
Are you auditioning to be one of the fourth CEO?
I just want Daddy David Ellison to come scoop me up. Yeah.
By the way, can I just add, longtime listeners of the podcast know that my daughters changed my avatar on Netflix to just Daddy.
Huh?
What they did on Paramount is even weirder.
Is it Ainsley from Landman?
No, it's something from SpongeBob, I think.
Okay.
But what they did was, my older daughter, whose avatar is Korra from The Legend of Korra, put a parental block on it.
Mm-hmm.
On me?
As a bit?
I think she thought she was being responsible and being like, this will keep me from watching the Taylor Sheridan shows that Uncle Chris talks about so much, and I can't be trusted to be left alone.
Yeah.
But now, whether I'm logging in to the newest episode of Landman or our friends Jim Nance and Tony Romo calling a playoff game, I have to enter a pin that she came up with.
Uh-huh.
So I am the one that is being protected.
It turns out this prison wasn't keeping us in.
Or maybe I set it up and forgot to keep myself from watching these Taylor Sheridan shows for you.
I was so excited when I saw that this was an hour and 20 minutes, not for my own benefit, although I certainly enjoyed myself, but knowing that this was waiting for you.
So mean.
And I want to start there.
Yeah, okay.
This is a huge hit. And
yeah,
I
to a
wanted
degree, I didn't understand. You should get into these numbers here.
I can't really speculate on like what the actual numbers are. I know that there was a release from Paramount several weeks ago that said through 4 weeks, it had racked up something like 15 million viewers per episode.
Yes, and that's in aggregate with all the whatevers. But regardless, there's no context in which that's not astronomical and insane for this era, especially on a streaming service.
And then you get into the anecdotal part where if you read any of the interviews with Billy Bob Thornton that went up last night after the finale in the trades, he's just like, this is the biggest thing I've ever been a part of, pretty much. You know, I mean, with the exception of Armageddon.
I was going to say he was in Armageddon.
Yeah, but like, I mean, I think that
Love
this is
Actually.
a very big show, and I kind of wonder whether they had no idea that this was going to happen. Because there are certain things about it that this is a very, very, very soap operatic and dramatic show, and we're going to spoil it for people who haven't watched the finale. Spoilers going forward.
I would also like to note that, at least from my own anecdotal research, there is a large percentage of listeners who count on us for their Landman recaps.
Well, let me tell you what happens.
Who do not watch the show, but listen to us. So thank you for that.
For a show that is so dramatic, there is basically no dramatic tension in this
Zero.
series.
It actively steers away from
it. And that occurred to me last night. Here's where we ended, okay? Tommy has gotten promoted and is essentially gambling with Monty's money now. The cartel has made peace with him. He will not get in any trouble for the Texas National Guard's bombing of drug dealers.
Nope.
He's with his ex-wife again.
And loves her deeply and always has.
Loves her. Daughter is with yet another 5-star recruit.
But this one will hold her at night. In addition to doing other things that she can only whisper in his ear.
His son has fallen in love with a widow who, despite everything, loves him back. And when she's like, I don't know if we should do this, he does the exact right thing.
Incredible.
And is like, walk me through your memories.
Of your deceased husband.
Who I was present for the death of.
Whose role I have now taken.
His son also has an idea that has apparently never occurred to anyone in the history of oil business in Texas.
And is able to just cold call dozens of salt of the earth, cynical, weathered farmers.
Yes.
And within the span of a single walk among the tall grasses, get them to sign a document.
Giving him leasing rights to their oil drum.
Without reading the document?
No, they just want to have a cup of coffee with him.
They just want to have a cup of coffee, yes.
And he is successfully now building a monopoly on the wolf camp terrain of Texas, where, like, I think you can sort of see the large tankers pointing towards each other of Tommy being in charge of MTEX, which is trying to do fracking, and Cooper also trying to frack.
Yeah.
And this dad and this son
both being like, we agree!
Let's frack!
Let's both
I love you, Dad!
This is great! We hate electric vehicles!
They do introduce a new adversary to this series, which Andy rightly asked me as he was watching it on text message. is that Andy Garcia? And I said, yes.
They don't have a Shazam for faces yet, so I was just double checking.
Andy Garcia, it had been leaked that he was appearing on this series a while ago, and as the weeks went on, I thought maybe he would be, Monty Miller's brother or something.
You thought Taylor Sheridan would look at Andy Garcia and think of anything other than El Jefe, Capo de Tutti Capo of the Mexican drug cartels? You are giving him far too much credit, but
so he shows up as just in the nick of time as
truly.
Tommy is being seriously tortured by a cartel guy.
Also, I want to tread carefully here because I know that in some ways you are considered management of the Ringer, but do you have any thoughts on how El Jefe deals with sort of, disobedient employees?
Well, we don't really get much clarity on that because it's all shot POV style from behind the scrim of Tommy's.
The repeated gunshots and the sound of bodies clunking to the floor left you in a state of confusion?
Yeah. I mean, so Andy Garcia's character, I believe his name is Galino, shows up at the very end of the episode and
say it in Pusha T voice. It sounds better.
Suggests that he and Tommy are going to be partners going forward in some capacity.
No, they're going to be friends.
Yeah.
Now,
I thought that the line that was interesting was that he was like, I may be interested in getting into the oil business.
That was when it got interesting. The show it is the monkeys with the typewriters. Like every so often, a few lines of Hamlet emerge.
Yeah.
There are moments.
Yeah.
I enjoy those moments.
But I have to admit that I have started skipping the Ainsley scenes.
Did you?
I am just trying to be accountable. Like when she is talking to Ryder, I just click 10 seconds ahead.
What interesting, whenever I see Adriana begin to do a silent montage of looking at things while wearing a tank top, I slow it down.
Their relationship is the best part of the show to me.
No, but that scene was so long.
I know.
I get it. You're looking at pictures?
Well, so that takes me back to the hour and 20 thing.
Yeah. It earned it. Everything's bigger in Texas, homie.
Best example of, I can't tell if this is like Taylor on the Benihana grill making the onion volcano and just being like, I have it all at the disposal.
I don't think so, but go on.
Or is this just like a crazy mishmash of found footage, scribbled bar napkin notes, plot pieces being stitched together, strike affected shooting schedules where people are like, most of this series take place on the phone while Tommy is driving back and forth across Texas. Like,
I disagree. I think that there is intention here, and there is scaffolding, and there's a sense of, I mean, he's a perfectly good writer and constructor of things, right? Like it's what's the line from Waiting for Guffman where Eugene Levy's like, I wasn't the class clown, but I sat next to him and I studied him.
One of Taylor's favorites, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. He's
Waiting
like
for Guff.
just him and Paul Simon at Arts. Talking about their favorite Eugene Levy bits.
Yeah.
There is a shape and arc to it that you can suddenly, every so often, you just get a glimpse of, and it's pulled into focus, right? Like the opening montage where there's the history of this business, the Cooper making the deals and realizing where that's going, the scene where the drug cartels are like, we'd like to go into the oil business. Yeah. I'm like, God damn, like there's something here, and you can feel it, and you can feel the momentum under their feet. But there is no editing process. There are no notes accepted here. And that is his right. He has earned it. But there is a flabbiness that comes with it that robs the project of some, not just momentum, but honestly, it feels like existential purpose. You just sort of lose it. Like when you are intercutting between scenes of Ainsley strip teasing and basically promising to BJ's on Alvarado for her quarterback boyfriend, while the roughneck dude is watching minor league baseball downstairs and her mom is clarifying butter and they don't even lock the door with Tommy having nails hammered into his
Angela
legs.
said she doesn't want them having sex in the car.
No, I know that she's respectful of their bodily autonomy. I'm just saying it is a weird mise-en-scène of what's going on up there.
Greenwald, you have to stop using Kaia de Cinema terms when talking about Landman. You got to let it happen, brother.
Au contraire. I think it is time to elevate this and consider it on the plate. This is the art we have. We don't get to pick and choose the moments we live in, okay?
Yeah.
This is what I got.
Sometimes there's a man,
So, but intercutting that romantic folie à deux, if you will, with Tommy being doused in gasoline.
And having a nail hammered into his thigh.
Was weird juxtaposition.
Yeah.
Similarly, let's go back to where you started, which is how the show just seems actively uninterested in dramatic stakes. Like,
no, there's tons of stakes. There's no, like, they introduce life and death around every corner, but they do not extend that life and death past any episode. And I wonder whether or not that's part of the recipe for its success.
Well, that it resolves every episode and moves on in the same way that, like,
that it essentially always starts from this place of, like, well, what's going to be the crisis today? And Angela's like, I have a new idea about how to revitalize our senior citizens.
I think that's a really smart observation. I think that the perpetual tension of television is to make everyone feel very safe and stable, and you know what you're getting every week, but also incrementally moving things forward without upsetting anyone.
Yes.
And he has found an incredible balance of vibes and procedural that works. What I'm suggesting is, like, shout out Wes Anderson, shout out
what this
Owen
novel
Wilson.
presupposes.
What this podcast presupposes is maybe it's not intentional, it's just working.
Yeah. That's what I'm trying to suss out. I guess it doesn't really matter what the intention is. It's what we see on screen. But what I'm trying to figure out is there was moments during the last episode where it gave me real last episode of 1883 vibes.
Mm-hmm.
And for people who don't know, 1883 is a Yellowstone prequel starring Sam Elliott, Tim McGraw, and Faith Hill, and is this incredibly violent wagon train story across the American West and the sort of foundation of the pioneer, era of this country.
Wasn't Ainsley in it?
She may have been.
She played an old frontierswoman. Go on.
Come on, man. So you're watching the last episode of 1883, and they, like, spoilers for 1883, let's just say they get to where they're going.
Let's say there's no 1884.
And you're like, oh, okay, so, like, is the next season going to be about starting the town? And it's like, no. Major characters die, and then the show ends.
Hard no.
And I thought for a second watching Landman, I was like, I don't think Tommy's going to die.
Yeah.
But, like, is this the end of the show? Like, it kind of almost had that freight train momentum over the course of the season and seemed to be resolving all of the open ends, like the loose ends.
I see that, but I fundamentally disagree only in the sense that there was you can see the evidence of some longer range planning, like John Hamm doing a season in the same way that Kyle Chandler did an episode.
And Michael Pena did an episode.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a few weeks ago we were like, why is Demi Moore on the show? And I think you suggested maybe she would become the new Monty or step into his shoes. Okay, that works. That's interesting. Yeah. The issue that I take with it in terms of, like, dramatic stakes is something that a writer's room can do. I want to be clear. This show is more successful than most things period.
Yeah.
And whatever he's doing is working. And I'm not suggesting that there's a way to improve the show. Let me just give you an option here to consider. That the thing that a writer's room can do at its best is pitch alternates and keep the thinking fluid enough so that when you make a decision, like he's going to be on the show for one season, to help the decision making to maximize every moment of the season that he is in, to wring out every potential dramatic and emotional and character-y fallout from his demise. What was so bizarre about the show is that he does a couple phone calls, gets on a couple planes, gives some speeches, has a first cardiac episode, is fine, is the recipient of a 6-minute monologue from Jerry Jones, has a second cardiac episode,
tears his aortic wall,
leaves the penultimate episode in a way that we think he's dead. This episode begins with him not dead, being told that he could be okay.
This is what I'm talking about. Is, like, I feel like there was
a decision made, like they were potentially keeping it in play.
Well, okay, so John Hamm's fate is only broadcast by a long shot outside of an emergency room where his family is sobbing and you can see a red light above his bed. So I was like, oh, I guess he's dead. Or they're really upset because he's, got a machine breathing for him and he is not he's not conscious.
They could go in post and put a little life in that meter.
All of the interviews are like after the death of Monty.
No, he's dead.
Like everybody from the show is like, and then Monty dies. And I was like, that almost felt like, let's shoot a couple of different ways of doing this and see what we want to go with. I completely understand, like, a writer's room and other creative voices in there might stress test certain things and be like, the tonal shift between Angela and Ainsley at a strip club and Billy Bob Thornton being fucking tortured by the Mexican cartel is just like too far apart. That being said,
okay.
I almost feel like more shows could use the chaos of this show. Like, more shows should be weirder and a little less like, well, that's against the rules. No, you have to do this. We
always come back to this point, and it's one that I'm very sympathetic to, which is everything we see is so noted and so group thought that seeing anything that proves that there's someone alive in there is interesting. But interesting isn't always the friend of storytelling. And so in terms of the Monty thing, just choose an event that lands equally on all the characters and stick with it. You know what I mean? Like, have him die and then talk about it. Have him be, you don't know what his fate is, and then have that land and move on. Don't stutter step it 3 times, Jerry Jones it, and then put it in a montage.
Yes.
Like, that just seems like a very weird use of story resources to do that. I will say, the cardiac surgeon who delivered the news, perhaps the best acting performance on the show all season. Sir, I do not know your name, but I commend you. I thought you delivered some truly gut-wrenching news with precision and verve, and I was very impressed.
It would have been awesome if it had been Joe's husband from Lioness was his cardiac surgeon.
That guy's too handsome for that job.
Jay Mandeville?
That part did work for
I would like to say something.
Please.
Again, I want to stress that I have nothing against this person playing the part.
Yeah. Let's have the conversation.
I would like to politely suggest that the character, Rebecca, who plays the litigator and negotiator of MTEX Oil, that this character get Lyme disease and move to Vermont. Something that they can manage.
Yeah,
go to some place. I guess there's a lot of ticks in Vermont. I don't know,
but like
know
a chronic condition that is not fatal.
Yes, where it just takes them out of the game, because this was the one part of the show. Not the one, but it was the part of the show that I think bothered me the most was that she played 3 different people this season.
Yes,
she played this outsider POV character that's supposed to explain to all the snowflakes from blue states about how oil and the world really works. Fine.
Yep.
Then she softens and is almost kind of like an adjunct, not member of the family, but like seems to be like, oh, I'm getting used to.
And it was also flirty a little
bit. These Texas ways. And you almost think for a second, is this going to be Tommy's girlfriend? Because
that's
the whole Angela thing in the beginning, it seems like almost more of an antagonist thing, you know? And then on a dime, Rebecca turns into Voldemort.
Thank you for that reference.
Well, I wouldn't know, but I'm just saying, I hear that guy does some bad stuff.
Some people think I wouldn't know, but I do.
Like, I'm going to put Cooper in prison. And I'm like, ma'am, you are not a state or federal prosecutor. You're just like...
she's fundamentally bad at her job, and yet everyone is just like, she's a killer.
Exactly.
Who knows nothing and just screams profanities. Yeah. Sounds
And
good.
then in the finale... is just basically like crying about fracking as Tommy tells her, like, too bad you're now the VP of...
Your great-grandfathers built this world and it's up to you to clean it up, Missy.
It's like, and if you don't like it, get rid of your phone and get off the grid.
I love that.
This sucked. And I just don't want to... I need Taylor to have a by himself meeting or whatever, or talk to some women and figure out a person that this character is.
You have a binder of women you could share with him. I want to talk briefly about the role of telecommunications on this show about oil.
Is that, you don't have any Rebecca comments? Or you feel like you're on the record?
I think I'm on the record.
Yeah.
I think I believe I ended my argument last week when I said one of the top 5 worst characters on television this century.
I guess that's
it's hard to come back from that or to find wiggle room.
Yeah.
A lot has been made of how the cell phone has changed storytelling.
Yeah.
In the sense
This is
that,
why, like, they say, like, PTA doesn't want to make contemporary films
Right.
is because it doesn't want to shoot people looking at their phones all
right.
the time.
Or like spy movies, like it's no longer like chalk marking dead drops and like being, archly
Yeah,
British
kind
and
of
talking
peaked
to your
with
counter.
Nokia core, you know?
Yeah,
Nokia wave.
For real though.
Yeah. Can't
do that anymore. When you watch Seinfeld reruns, like everyone's just walking into each other's apartments because how else could you communicate? So on the one hand, I respect Taylor's like commitment to the world as it is,
Sure.
not how we would want it to be.
Yeah.
Not the world our grandfathers had.
Well, in a sense, though, not really, because, I mean, you and I like a phone call.
Sure.
That's about the only person I talk to on the phone other than my wife and my mother.
This is what I'm saying, that like it's
And
tipped,
Juliet.
it's tipped to anyone else you'd like to add to the list?
Jeff Chow calls. Jeff Chow likes a phone call.
Okay, that's nice.
That's about it, though. Yeah. So it's five or six people.
But honestly, us discovering relatively recently that we still like phone calls was a beautiful moment. Like
Well, it's the foundation of our relationship. I used to leave you those messages from
Vermont.
45 minutes away in Boston where I'd be like, hey, brother. Yeah.
I got some CD singles.
Going to see Joan of Arc tonight. Karate's opening.
I'd be like, I think I'll stay in for the heavenly reunion when they hit the grad center. Good times. No, so much of this show is conducted over telephone and FaceTime that it is absurd. But also the way that he does phone calls is beyond absurd at this point. I just want to call attention to one thing that happened early in the episode that I cannot get out of my mind, which is we have the whole run with that phenomenal guest performance by the cardiac surgeon. And, Cammie's thinking about stuff and the girls who don't have lines, but they're crying. And Billy Bob gets the call from the really a little too shook army major.
Oh, yeah.
And he's just like, well, I got people who are lawyering up.
Yeah.
What are we going to do? It's
They're
all
National
fucking
Guard.
gone.
These guys are accountants and plumbers.
And Billy Bob's like, God damn it, not today. And he's like, you know what? I'll fucking call you back. So he then leaves.
Yeah.
We see him leaving the hospital. I'm like, oh, he's really got one on. Is he going to be spied upon again by the cartel? Or he lights a cigarette. And I'm like, oh, well, he had to go outside to light the cigarette because he's respectful.
Can't do that in the ICU.
Can't do that. You could do it when you're literally swimming in gasoline, but you can't do it in a waiting room in a Texas hospital. And I'm like, he's clearly going to call the cartel again, or he's going to move this story forward to, as he has done often, mollify someone. What he does instead is he calls the guy back, repeats all of his points about how this is not really a fucking problem.
Yes.
And the guy's like, okay, you're right. This second phone call really put my mind at ease, sir.
You cheered me up.
And then he hangs up. Now, again, this is not me being like snobby or judgmental, but I do feel like it could be like, Taylor, you know what's better than an hour and 20 minutes? Hour 18. You know what I mean? Like, that wasn't necessary.
Do you wish I talked to you more like Billy Bob talks to people? Like, where it's just like, here's how it is?
I wish everyone talked to me like that. Are you kidding me? The greatest lack in my life is clarity and declarative conversations.
Okay. That's my New Year's resolution.
It would be so great.
Yeah.
Truly, one of my happiest resources on the planet is the text chain with you and Kaya, where you just say, 10 a.m. tomorrow, Studio 6. And I'm like, thumbs up. Thank you. Thank you, work mom and dad. Thank you.
I don't know if I have anything else other than trying to unpack why I react so warmly towards the love story between Cooper and Ariana.
Before we go there,
Adriana.
can I ask you one other question? Did you think that the field trip to the strip club...
So you have nothing on Cooper and Adriana?
No, I want to go... Because we actually care about that, I want to do one more silly thing.
Okay. I have to completely admit to you that I more or less like zoned out during the strip club thing. Like I thought it was a funny joke that then took 2.5 episodes.
Yes, and it's not just that. It's to your original point. I was like, well, it's going to be slightly complicating for mom and daughter when one of these old people dies because they get so excited.
Yeah.
Reader, that did not happen.
Nope.
They had an amazing time and they made it back in time for nap and they'd like to do it again. That was the story.
Yeah.
That was the story. And the lesson learned is they're good people and they're going to do it again. That was the story.
Do you think, let's like sort of tease this out though. Like, is he...
Who's he?
Taylor,
Mhm.
by breaking all these rules,
Mhm.
like creating a new kind of storytelling. Like, is this like playlist storytelling where it's like, or skip the next song storytelling where it's like, hey, yeah, like that wouldn't it be funny if a bunch of old people went to a strip club? Why? Just cause.
Yeah, I mean, no one's
But
like,
you're just gonna do that like as like a 5-second thing, right? Like, no, it's gonna take 2 episodes to plan it and execute it.
and it's really funny, right? Like, it's funny. Old people getting boners, that's funny, right? And they're like, yeah, boss. That's funny. Keep going. This is better than Nate Bargatze Hour I watched last night. That's hilarious. Mhm.
Okay, so you don't think he's breaking the wheel?
He's the one. He's changing history.
First of his name.
No, I think that you are onto something that there is, again, I mean this in a positive way. I think that I don't think there's a lot of forethought in this, but I think he is remarkably good at fracking 5 decades of television storytelling and emerging with things that people like.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think it's actually complicated and needs to be studied under a microscope. Like, what is the alchemy of this? We spend a lot of time on this podcast over the years being like, but television is many things to many people. You know, you can watch Lioness and you can also watch
Landman. Yeah.
That's it. From one to the
if
other.
you listen to this podcast over the last couple of months,
it's pretty much all you can listen to. No, but I mean, I think a lot of our listeners will watch Abbott Elementary.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them will watch Bluey because of the children in their household, and others will, they might have watched like me, they may have been among the 6 people who watched Irma Vep on HBO, and they watched this. Like, there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So it actually, the rule breaking, the wheel breaking may be that we do not need to keep these flavors separate anymore, that everybody is watching everything and it's all kind of smeary. So we do not need to protect the very cleanly delineated sensibilities of some model viewer.
Yeah.
So maybe that. And I do think we see that reflected in the people in our lives or just anecdotally feedback who are watching the show, which does seem to be a healthy mix of snobs and basics in terms of what they want out of stuff.
I've gotten so many great text messages. I have to shout him out from Jason Gallagher and his wife Kelly, who have been watching this show from Oklahoma. Jason obviously has Texas roots.
Was Jason like, there have been earthquakes here before there was fracking?
Can I actually just tell you a couple of things Jason shared with me?
I love Jason, of course.
This is from last night. Jason hit me up and said, my favorite LOL moment was from earlier in the season during the college track meet scene. It opens with a guy from KU doing the high jump, and the height was clearly displayed. He successfully jumped 4 feet 5 inches, which is literally what our girls' middle school team could jump. And Kelly has like all these observations about how close pickup trucks drive to one another on gravel roads.
Oh, great.
She's like, you would never follow a car that closely because the gravel and the rocks that would kick up by the first car would hit your windshield. And so it's just like little things like that people are noticing. It's bringing a community together.
Of Snopes subscribers to debunk and nitpick. All of this said, here's where I'll bring it back to the point you wanted to make. The scene where Cooper is talking to this week's weathered farmer who's mistrustful of people wanting to, put solar panels on his land was so beautifully shot. Stephen Kay is the guy who directed these last run of episodes. They both looked fantastic. And it was like, I've used this word too much today for other reasons, but it was mythological storytelling. Like, these were the archetypal Texas images that speak to the soul. Yeah. And being honest and direct with each other and the promise of building something. And maybe that appealed to me not only because I like that character and I like that performance and I like that storyline, but it suggests a future and places for it to go that won't necessarily
There's something
be resolved.
kind of, I don't mean to sound overbearing about this, but there's something kind of precious about his performance, and it's telling that his performance takes place largely in a vacuum. He has one true family scene in the dinner,
but has no connection on a character or even performance level
He's
with the
like
other people
almost in a
his family.
coma when Angela comes in and immediately needs to take a Xanax and disappears.
Yeah.
And for the rest of the time is on this other side of the story that almost aesthetically takes place in a different world than the rest of Landman, right? Like He doesn't use his phone. He's talking to people in person. Like, it's an old way of doing things that I think suits the show and it obviously speaks to us, but I don't know if Landman was about Jacob Laughlin and his dad on opposite sides of the oil industry, but like was shot with that vibe. I don't know if it would have been as successful.
No, it wouldn't. I mean, there is a version of this where Jason Katims is working with the same Texas Monthly article. No, he's working with the same outline that Taylor Sheridan delivered to Paramount, but then he got too busy and stepped away. And frankly, it is exciting to think about that. That sounds like a much richer, much smarter in a lot of ways shows. And I don't mean like intellectual.
Yeah.
I mean in terms of its decision making.
Sure.
I don't think it would be as popular. I just don't think it would because Taylor in his storytelling is shameless. And again, I'm using language that sounds heated, but I mean, he goes for it. He does the biggest version of everything. The cartel guy takes Tommy out and Sheridan was like, we are going to blow up a well.
Yeah.
That is what we were going to do again because we are budgeted for it or because I want it. You know what I mean? Like he goes all the way. And I think that big swings do resonate with people. But there are these glimpses of the type of storytelling that I think he wants to be telling. It. That Cooper storyline has elements of the Yellowstone flashback shows at their best, and I've engaged with them in limited ways. But that's sort of like
sturdy,
not just sturdy, but sweeping, right? Like the lonesome dovishness that we like. We're like, this is about the beginnings, not just of a family or of a family fortune, but about a land.
Yeah, passage of time,
a way of living,
ways of doing things. Yeah,
he loves that shit, and I am very susceptible to that. And it's just increasingly hard to find that in the midst of all of the noise. But I think the thing that you're suggesting, which is not wrong, is that the noise is crucial to the popularity or to the resonance.
I never expected to talk about every single episode of a Taylor Sheridan show with you. It's been really fun.
What do I get for this? We didn't discuss this.
That being said,
I
don't think it was homework for you. I can sense from you when you're like, I have to do this for the good of the pod or whatever. And I can tell sometimes when you're like,
I keep things pretty buttoned up.
But I can tell when you're like, oh, all right, another one of it. Like, yes, another episode of this. You were not like that with this.
Well, first of all, I enjoy my time with you.
I know.
But I think my thing with this is these little, what are they? Crumbs of hope, as the episode was called. Which is an insane phrase that I don't think is a phrase, but I suddenly found myself searching for a way to describe what the show gives me, and the show gave me even that.
See?
So that's what I'm saying. There are these like little bits.
He speaks in your voice, American.
These little teasing bits where I'm like, that's the vague shadow of something I would like to watch.
Yeah.
And then there is an element of it that is like, he's not really going to build up stripping for old people
as a 2-episode arc.
For that is not just that is the crescendo of some characters. I can't believe he's going to do that. And again, this is like you mixed up my peanut butter and my chocolate, like these things that go to like it speaks to something about the way people do engage with TV now, which is like
that's what I'm trying to get at.
To keep your attention, you have to be that it's like he's making a bet with the audience that's separate and apart from is Tommy going to survive? It's like, am I actually going to do this? Mm-hmm. Like, are we really going to put the show in this place? And he definitely does.
Yes. And there's something about that I think I respond to. I think I responded to it with first couple seasons of Ozark, of that accelerated plot.
What's next?
Like that the speed limit breaking of the plot of most shows would end here. This would be the end of the first season. It's the end of the first episode. Most shows would never do this and bring this character in out of nowhere to be this massive sea change of a character. It's like, but what if we did it every other week? We just brought somebody on who's just going to fuck shit up, you know? And that's kind of what happened over this season in Landman. Like, I think that explains somewhat what Rebecca turned into. It explains the consistent presence of the cartel and then now bringing in Andy Garcia.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I really I enjoyed myself watching it. I thought the first few episodes were like truly great, and then it just became like a crazy fun thing to experience.
You know, I agree with you. I know that you feel this way, that I think that trying to ascribe political motivations or read tea leaves in the show is facile. I don't think that's really relevant.
No.
But I do think that the one thing about Taylor Sheridan that people respond to and that is in tune with the times is he is unapologetic.
And he cares about mental health.
He cares deeply, and he's suspicious of green technology. But also, no, in the sense that he never backtracks, right?
Yep.
He puts everything in, and then just is like, well, now there's a new character to worry about, or now she's going to be in charge of this, or she's behaved this way, and she was introduced to do this, but fuck it, we're going this way instead. There is never any equivocating or any doubt.
Yeah.
And I do think there is something appealing about that when you are asking someone to drive your stories bus for a few weeks or a few years.
Greenwald, it was great to see you. Hopefully we will have a show on Thursday.
Yes, I would like that as well.
And we'll talk about The Pit. We'll talk about The Agency. We'll get ready for Severance, which is coming on Friday.
Yeah.
Thank you to Kaya for producing us. Thank you to CT for filming us today. And hope everybody in Los Angeles listening to us stays safe.
Yeah, just lots of love to the entire city, region, community, and to all of our listeners. Thanks for sticking with us.